So if you're one of those RC enthusiasts that keeps saying, we need something new, give us something new, you can count on Tamiya to give you something new and different. I've got here the new BT-01 chassis. This is a new chassis from Tamiya, and it's actually pretty exciting because you can build it in 3 different ways. Let me show you guys. On the side of the box here, it shows you that you could build it midship, rear wheel drive. You could do it front motor, front wheel drive, or you could do it front motor, rear wheel drive. And that comes in perfect for this Toyota Supra body that comes in this kit. I think a lot of people are gonna be excited about building up a cool rear wheel drive Supra, and the body set, I've already taken it out of the box. It looks absolutely awesome. It is a full build-up kit. You're gonna have to go and supply some of your electronics, your radio system, your servo, battery, and charger. It does come with the speed controller and motor. You're also gonna have to paint up the body. That means some masking work's involved. I'm gonna go and knock out this build, and we'll talk about this new chassis when I'm all done. The build's finished, and assembling the chassis was a lot like building up the MB-01 that I reviewed a little while back. I'll have a link for that up above if you wanna check out that review later. But first up, let's talk about the Supra body. This thing looks awesome, doesn't it? Very scale. I think they got their proportions right on it, and I went with the bright red paint job. It's backed with some silver, and that's because the spoiler comes molded in silver, and I just figured that I better back the red with silver as well, just so everything matches up, and I think it turned out pretty good. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. The mirrors are actually molded in that same silver, and you'll have to paint those. Unless you're gonna go ahead and paint up a silver Supra body, then that would all work together. But I love the red. The lines on this are really good. I like how the bumpers roll in as they should for the Supra. They got the scoops on the side, and then they give you the window mask, so you can, of course, mask out the windows, and then the headlights. They don't do that for the taillights, though. So if you want to add lights to that later on down the road, that's something you would have to mask off yourself. But the front, they give you headlight buckets. Unfortunately, it's not drilled out for the LED light, so you would have to do that yourself if you want to add LED lights to the body. There's still body posts, as you can see. Tamiya's still doing that thing, so their bodies are universal to the other chassis that they make out there. There's actually a couple extra dimples here, so I'm guessing it would fit some other chassis that they have. And then they go ahead and give you their standard spoke wheels that they have in their lineup. These are silver, obviously, and then their standard treaded tire, no insert on those. One exciting note about finishing up the body on this was the decals were pre-cut from the factory, which really sped up the time of finishing up this body and was pretty awesome, to be honest with you. However, guys, the bad news is a little birdie told me, don't get used to it. We're probably not gonna see it often. All right, let's pop the body off and take a closer look at the chassis. And at first glance, it looks like the MB-01, doesn't it? In fact, the rear section is shared with the MB-01, and from what I gather by the part numbers, the front section is a bit different. But you can see the steering bracket plate here is the same, and the way the body posts are, the gearboxes, but the arms are different to match the 1/10 scale size. So let's start off with the front. You can see that it's got a nice foam bumper up there. Battery mount is the same as the MB-01, where you just flip up the end plate. It's on a hinge, and it's got a switch mount, which we'll probably never use. Servo's mounted over here on the side. And what's really cool about this chassis, as I mentioned earlier, is it could be assembled in a number of configurations. And they give you the sheets inside the box, so you could go and make that conversion easily. It looked a little bit intimidating to me, so I just stuck with the instructions so I could have the rear motor, rear wheel drive, because I want to try that out. But the chassis goes together really well. Let's take a look at the suspension now. We'll start off with the front. So it's just got their friction dampers, separate shock tower, and then you can see molded suspension arms with steering knuckles on the outside. The suspension is the same in the front and in the rear. It's just part of how this chassis is adjustable. If you want to go make this a front wheel drive car, you would just take the steering rack and move it to the front and move this rack to the back. And again, that's all explained in the instructions, but you could set this up in a number of different ways. But the suspension, a little bouncy. One thing that I wasn't a fan of about the suspension setup is they have the pivots as part of the chassis, part of the front plate here. Just wish those were separate pieces in case something breaks. You know, it wasn't part of the chassis. You know, maybe just the arm would break if you hit a curb pretty hard, but I did wish that was a separate piece. And the cool thing about the suspension though is they do have droop screws set into the arm. So definitely like that. Adjustable tie rods for the steering, and then actually for the toe in the rear. And now let's move on to the drivetrain, and actually that's in the back here. So it's got a similar gearbox to the MB-01. Actually, I think it's the same gearbox as the MB-01. It's got a stubby drive shaft to the rear gearbox, gear differential on the inside. Of course, we've got a mix of bushings in there, guys, like usual. But everything spins nice and free. They've got their composite outdrives and composite dog bones and 12mm hexes at the wheels. Last thing we need to talk about is they do give you the motor. There is your 540 Mabuchi motor and the Hobby Wing speed controller, which is still fitted with a Tamiya plug. It's definitely a good looking chassis, guys, very versatile, and the MB-01 was a lot of fun to drive. So let's see how the BT-01 is. Yeah guys, I'm testing out the car on a basketball court because it's the cleanest spot to drive an on-road car in New England in the winter time. So look at this thing. Isn't this cool? I love the look of that Supra. Man, I always wanted one. How many people wanted one? I always wanted one. There was actually a guy at the hobby shop that would visit the hobby shop where I used to work when I was a kid that had a normally aspirated Supra, and I always begged him to buy it off him, but he never sold it to me. I don't blame him. But anyway, back to the car. Look at this. You can do a little bit of sliding through the corner, but if you push it too far, the rear end definitely lets out on you. See that? It just washes out if you just power it on the bottom end. So you really got to roll into the throttle. And if you're pushing this thing at speed, the front end will actually understeer, which is good. So it's good to keep the power on in this car. But then when you let off the throttle, you definitely need to roll back on so you don't loop the thing around. I'm actually using my rugged radio with this, but I'd suggest if you're buying a radio specifically for the car, check out one of the radios that come with a receiver that has a gyro function, just to help keep the car doing that. So yeah, can't be throttle happy with this thing. It's really about easing on and off the power, but that looks good. The car's just got a good sound to it. See if I can go top speed for you guys. There we go, that was it. Brake, oh, that was awesome. Because this is nice and flat, it's not bouncing around, so the spring shocks aren't too big of a deal. Sure, if you're just driving on a regular asphalt surface, you'd probably notice a little bit more wheel chatter. But nice job, Tamiya. We see a lot of four-wheel drive on-road cars in the RC world because they're just easier to drive. Manufacturers obviously want you to have a great experience with their model, and a car that hooks up is going to give that to you. And that's why we don't see too many rear-wheel drive models for on-road use. I'm gonna exclude drift cars because they're a different animal. But a real car, let's say, is going to hook up well because it's got all that weight to it, and that doesn't necessarily translate over to RC use. So when you drive a rear-wheel drive car, you tend to do a lot of donuts with it. it. However, with the BT-01, I think Tamiya found a good balance here because I was able to drive this thing pretty well. I had a lot of fun with it over on the basketball court. Obviously in wintertime right now, my track selection is limited, but it did really well there. I like how this car transitions in the corners. I think it takes off really well. You see a little bit of squat in the rear. You see the tires bite in. It's really cool to watch, but I think they found a good balance with this car, with the motor in the center, the battery right in front of it. It just drove really well. You still have to manage your throttle with it. You can't punch it because you're gonna do donuts with it, but off power, I think the steering was really good on it. You know, just gotta roll back in when you're exiting the corners. And overall, it was just a fun car to drive. And let's say you aren't into the whole rear wheel drive thing. Once you get it assembled, you just find yourself doing donuts too much. The adjustability of this chassis will allow you to go and turn it into a front wheel drive car. Or you can even do front motor rear wheel drive if you want to get some more weight over the front wheels. There's options there for you to play with. So I don't think you're gonna get bored with this model. I don't think you're gonna get frustrated if it doesn't work for you. You'll have some options to get it dialed into your preferences. Now, you know, some of the downsides of this model are it doesn't come with bearings. Guys, back in 1984, when I got my Falcon, it didn't come with bearings. That's just how Tamiya models are. And I think it's time we stop whining about it and just understand that this is how they offer their cars. So the modeler can build it the way they want to. So if you're gonna run it a lot, I would say go get bearings for it. You know, and not everybody runs these things. They just love building them up as is, and you know, bushings are gonna work just fine for that. The other thing to watch out for with these cars is the pivot ball suspension. The outer pivot ball on the suspension can wear out, and over time it could eventually pop out while you're driving, or if you hit a curb or something like that. They do have an aluminum option that will wear a bit less, or a quick fix for it is to put some large washers on top just to help cap it off and it won't pop out on you. But that's just something to watch out for with this particular setup. So guys, I'm excited that Tamiya has given us another fun on-road option. I'll have links for it in the video description below. Those are affiliate links. It helps us out here on the channel. Thank you so much for using those. And if you have any questions or comments, throw it in the section below. We'll see you back soon for some more RC driver videos.